I mentored over 250 front-end developers, helping them move to a senior level and beyond. And what I realized is that success sometimes comes not from being a JavaScript genius, which of course helps, but from doing the right things and doing them for a sustained period of time, which sounds easy, but it's not, because most front-end developers burn out before getting to the point of being successful. Here are the 11 most important reasons why front-end developers burn out and how you can avoid them to make sure that you stay in the game long enough for you to be successful. The first one, it's pixel pushing. For example, if as a front-end developer, you have a product manager who wants like pixel perfect UIs and they are constantly pushing things back to development because of one pixel differences, you will inevitably burn out. To fix this, you should talk to your product manager upfront and define some development standards. If they want pixel perfect UIs, then you should estimate the changes. Of course, it will take longer. The other way is to encode these standards into your design system or global style sheets. So you kind of define once, implement everywhere, and make things easier for yourself. The second sure way to burn out as a front-end developer, it's by having endless interview rounds. Having to go through 6 or 7 interview rounds just to get rejected or worse, ghosted, it's a sure way to burn out and end up disappointed and demotivated. What also happens is that by the time you get to the 4th interview, people forget that you were interviewing for a front-end position and start asking you full stack or back-end questions, like how to partition databases. And while you cannot really choose how to be interviewed, what you can choose is which company to interview for. If you can, avoid companies with long interview processes. And if you have a long interview process, then do other shorter interview processes at the same time, so you don't put all your eggs in the same basket and at least avoid being disappointed at the end. The third sure way to burn out, it's framework fatigue. This one is pretty common, but every time you open your YouTube feed, you see some new front-end library or front-end framework you are supposed to learn. And if you do this for long enough time, you're gonna start feeling like no matter how much time you spend learning, you will never manage to catch up. A way around this is to focus on durable knowledge, on the things that don't change so often. JavaScript frameworks might change, but the way browsers work is quite similar to 5 or even 10 years ago. The next thing you can do to avoid framework fatigue is to simply opt out of this shiny object mania and limit the time you spend on YouTube, social media, limit the newsletters you're subscribed to, just limit your exposure. The 4th reason why front-end developers burn out, it's scope creep. I bet you've been in this situation at least once in your life as a front-end engineer. You start defining some initial requirements, then you start working on that, then the product manager or stakeholders keep adding features and changing things, and it quickly becomes a never-ending project. I remember in my second job as a developer, once it took us so long to get a project to production, like about a year, that we had a joke in the development team that the moment we will release it, it will actually become legacy code because it's so late already. Scope creep will happen from time to time, no matter what you do. But a good way to mitigate it is to avoid committing to things that haven't been properly specified. So spend as much time refining requirements as you spend coding. Of course, you cannot do this if you're not good at coding, so get good at coding first. On to the next one, unclear requirements. This one is kind of self-explanatory, but sometimes people think that you as a front-end developer can read their mind. They give you some rough deadlines of how the UI should look like, and you jump in, you try to build it, they don't like it, and ask for changes. Back to scope creep. Again, the solution here is roughly the same, but make sure you have clear requirements before you start working. And if not, don't start coding, ask for clarifications, and have it all in writing. Which gets me to the next reason why front-end developers burn out, and that is having their work or their estimates questioned by the management or the product managers, which always want things faster and faster. The problem with frontend is that it's so visual that everybody can have an opinion about it. The other problem is that sometimes you have a marketing kid in the management who is able to add Google Analytics pixel to the website and already thinks of themselves as some kind of software engineer, and they start getting into your estimates, also called micromanagement. I wish I could give you a perfect solution for this one, but unless they hire a professional product owner, you should really look for another company to work for. The next sure way to burn out as a front-end developer is having to deal with undocumented APIs or with backend developers who assume that the code is self-documented and that everything you need is right there for you to implement it, and you should just grab their API endpoint or client or whatever and work with it out of the box. And while you cannot really control how the backend development team does their job, what you can do is to try to set some common standards and communicate your needs as a front-end engineer clearly. Also, try not to react emotionally in these situations. I had some bad experiences with backend teams, but most backend devs I've dealt with were nice and helpful. Just let them know what you need from them. Don't assume they know. The next sure way to burn out as a front-end developer is by constantly switching between tasks, also called context switch. This can be switching different code bases, switching different frameworks, switching between coding, meetings, bug fixing, and whatever comes your way. A good way to prevent this is to block your calendar during deep work times where no meetings are allowed, and by batching similar tasks together. The final reason why front-end developers burn out, it's because the reality of our job, which is that we have to support dozens of browsers and devices and platforms that don't always support the same features. And sure, most ways you can add a polyfill to help you with that, but polyfills don't always cover all the use cases. I remember one of our projects, the front-end team would spend 20% of their time developing new features and 80% of the time getting them to work on Internet Explorer 11. What a freaking nightmare. The way we fix that is by convincing management that spending so much development time on supporting like 3% of our user base, it's a lot harder than just forcing our users to kind of upgrade their browsers, because it's about time. Okay, question for you now. What is one reason that made you burn out as a front-end developer, and how have you fixed it? Let us know in the comments. And by the way, if you're looking to develop that kind of durable knowledge, the best way to start is by understanding what you don't know first. Check out the free technical assessment, link is in the comments, which will help you find out your technical gaps as a front-end developer and give you personalized hints on how to fix them.